What if the world you know is just a thin veil over something much darker, something ancient, hidden, and watching? These aren't ghost stories or internet rumors. These are real, chilling mysteries that have left behind terrified witnesses, missing persons, and questions no one can answer. From houses that whisper your name to entities hiding in static, these are the 5 paranormal mysteries that still defy reality, and once you hear them, you'll never see the world the same way again. The mirror in room 313. The Hotel Carolyn stood quietly in the heart of Prague, its Gothic architecture casting long, crooked shadows across the cobbled street. For over a century, the hotel had welcomed poets, artists, and travelers alike. It was luxurious but modest, the kind of place that whispered history in every corner. But room 313 was different. It whispered something else, something no one could explain. The first strange event was documented in the summer of 1987. A middle-aged couple from Sweden, Henrik and Ellen Anderson, checked into room 313 for a 5-night stay. They were seasoned travelers, comfortable in cities across Europe, and nothing about the old hotel initially struck them as odd. That changed on the second night. According to hotel records and a statement given by the night receptionist, Henrik came to the front desk at 3:17 a.m., pale and shaking. He asked if the hotel had ever had complaints about strange reflections in the mirror. When the receptionist asked what he meant, Henrik said, "We saw ourselves. But it wasn't us. They were smiling when we weren't." They checked out early the next morning and refused to speak further. Their room was inspected and nothing unusual was found, save for a thin crack running along the edge of the tall Victorian mirror that hung above the dresser. Over the next few months, reports from room 313 increased. Guests claimed to see flashes of movement in the mirror, things that shouldn't have been there. A young woman visiting from Argentina reported seeing her reflection blink after she had already turned away. A traveling businessman from Germany claimed he saw an extra person standing behind him, a pale figure with sunken eyes and no mouth. Each account was slightly different, but one detail was always the same. The reflection in the mirror was delayed, as though the glass itself had to catch up with time. The hotel, facing complaints and a growing sense of unease among the staff, stopped renting out room 313. But in 1992, it was reopened for a short time during a full booking period. That's when the real mystery began. Tomas and Iveta Novak were a Czech couple celebrating their 10th wedding anniversary. They checked into room 313 on October 19th and were last seen on the evening of the 21st. Their dinner reservation went unclaimed. Housekeeping knocked the next morning, received no response, and entered. The room was completely undisturbed, bed made, luggage still in place, but the couple was gone. There was no sign of forced entry, no broken windows, and the door had not been unlocked by hotel staff or another guest. The only oddity noted by police was the mirror. The crack that had once been a thin edge was now a jagged vein running right through the center. Security footage from the hallway showed nothing. No one entered or exited the room. Tomas and Iveta simply ceased to exist. The room was permanently closed after that. Some staff claimed the hotel quietly disposed of the mirror, though no official record exists of its removal. What is known is that shortly afterward, a longtime housekeeper named Hanna Zitkova abruptly quit her job. A week later, she jumped from the roof of a nearby apartment building. Her suicide note, hastily scrawled and barely legible, contained just 5 words, "I saw the other side." Rumors spread quickly. Locals claimed the mirror was cursed, possibly older than the hotel itself. Some said it was a remnant from a burned monastery, others believed it had belonged to a 19th-century occultist who practiced scrying, an ancient method of using reflective surfaces to access hidden realms. Whatever the origin, the events tied to room 313 refused to be forgotten. Over the next decades, occasional stories still emerged. Staff reported hearing laughter behind the closed door, or the faint sound of a mirror shattering. The hotel tried to quiet such rumors. Room 313 was converted into a locked storage space, then eventually walled off completely. Guests would occasionally ask about the missing number in the hallway sequence, but no explanation was given. Then, in 2016, an urban exploration video surfaced online. A group of teenagers had broken into the upper floors of the hotel during renovations and stumbled upon the sealed room. The footage showed them prying open a wall panel, revealing the long-forgotten entrance to 313. Dust coated every surface. The bed was still made, untouched for over 20 years. But the mirror was still there. One of the teens, a girl named Lida, stepped in front of the mirror and jokingly asked, "Do I look like me?" Her friends laughed, but the video caught something chilling, a second set of eyes blinking behind her in the glass. They fled the room immediately. Days later, Lida reportedly began experiencing seizures and night terrors. She was institutionalized and has since refused to speak, except for one repeating sentence. "It's not a reflection if it looks back." Experts have analyzed the video and claim it was doctored, but no edits were ever found. The hotel, now under new ownership, refuses all inquiries about room 313 and insists it does not exist. But blueprints leaked in 2018 show a distinct space between rooms 311 and 315, one that remains empty and inaccessible. To this day, no one knows what truly happened in room 313. The mirror's current location is unknown. Some believe it was destroyed. Others think it was sold at auction under a different description, now hanging innocently in someone's home, waiting. The lost frequency. In the murky world of shortwave radio, countless voices bounce across the airwaves, military codes, forgotten broadcasts, number stations counting in monotone. But none are quite like Signal 56B. It began as a curiosity, an odd anomaly caught by a group of amateur radio operators in 1974. What they thought was a pirate station became something far more disturbing. The first to catch it was John Ramsey, a retired Navy communications technician based in Liverpool. On a stormy night in August, Ramsey tuned into a frequency around 25.396 MHz and heard what he described as mechanical laughter, followed by a string of numbers whispered in a child's voice. 5, 3, 7, 9, 1, awake, then silence. He noted the time and frequency, shrugged it off, and went to bed. But when he tuned in again the next night, the voice returned. This time, it counted backward, interspersed with brief sounds, wet breathing, static screams, and an unmistakable whisper. "We are waiting." Word spread among the tight-knit community of shortwave enthusiasts. Some began hunting the signal, logging its occurrences. They discovered something bizarre: it would never transmit from the same location twice. Sometimes it sounded like it was coming from North America, other times Eastern Europe, or even the South Pacific. Experts said this was impossible. No known signal could bounce that erratically and still remain so strong. In 1976, a Romanian operator named Sorin Luca managed to record a long segment of 56B and claimed he had found a pattern. The numbers, when placed into a spectrogram, revealed coordinates: an uninhabited island in the Bering Sea. Sorin planned an expedition, funded privately, but disappeared en route. His plane vanished from radar over the Arctic Circle. His tapes were confiscated by authorities and have never been released. In the decades that followed, the legend of 56B grew darker. Dozens of listeners reported receiving phone calls after tuning in. The calls came from unknown numbers and were always silent, except for a strange, rhythmic breathing. One woman in Norway received 56 such calls in a single night before destroying her radio. A teenager in Japan, known only by his online handle, Ghostvane, streamed the signal live in 2009. In the final seconds of the stream, his webcam caught his eyes rolling back, mouth agape, as he collapsed backward. His parents found him in a catatonic state. He has never recovered. In one of the most chilling cases, an American audio engineer named Carla Trevors attempted to filter and analyze the signal using advanced audio software. Her goal was to isolate the child's voice. When she did, she discovered it wasn't a child's voice at all, it was her own. An exact match, down to the vocal signature, despite the fact she had never submitted any recordings to any service, ever. She destroyed her equipment and moved off the grid. In a blog post written just days before she vanished in 2013, she stated, "They don't broadcast. They reflect. The signal isn't sent, it's caught." And if you're listening, they're listening back. Conspiracy forums erupted. Theories ranged from alien intelligence to interdimensional communication. Some speculated the numbers were activation codes or warnings, but no one could decode the entire message. The most terrifying idea came from a former CIA cryptologist who, under the pseudonym Chimera 72, claimed that 56B is not a human signal at all. It's a mirror frequency, he wrote, a reverse echo of something outside our perception. When we hear it, we aren't intercepting it. We are triggering it. Radio blackouts have occurred across several cities shortly after high-activity nights. In one instance in Krakow, Poland, local emergency systems were hijacked for 7 seconds, repeating a single phrase in dozens of languages: "You are not alone. You were never alone." No one took responsibility. Attempts to jam or locate the origin of 56B have failed completely. Satellites, ground-based antennas, and government agencies alike have tried to triangulate its position, but it's as if the signal isn't constrained to one point. It appears where it wants, when it wants, on its own terms. In 2020, a professor of acoustic physics at MIT, Dr. Yoon Ha-min, attempted a bold experiment. He built a soundproof chamber lined with anti-reflective materials and tuned a high-sensitivity receiver into the 25.396 range. For 72 hours, the room was monitored with infrared cameras, motion sensors, and brainwave scanners. The professor locked himself inside, determined to document the full transmission sequence. At hour 42, the sensors inside began spiking erratically. The signal was detected, but something was wrong. It wasn't a broadcast anymore. It was a conversation. Two voices now, speaking back and forth in what appeared to be an ancient form of Sumerian. A translator on the project claimed one word kept repeating: entry. When the door was opened, Dr. Yoon was gone. No trace. All recording devices inside had been wiped, except for one corrupted audio file. Its waveform is distorted and clipped, but a segment has been isolated. It plays a single, horrific message: "We are inside the signal now. You brought us in." Today, mentions of Signal 56B are rare. The Reddit community that tracked it, r/spectral radio, was mysteriously deleted overnight in 2023. Every post gone. No explanation. Some believe the frequency no longer exists. Others think it has simply grown tired of being hunted. But every now and then, a ham radio somewhere buzzes into life. A whisper. A count. A laugh that sounds just slightly wrong. Those who know the stories immediately turn the dial. The smart ones never listen twice. The Vantua Experiment. Nestled deep within the forested hills of northern Italy lies the crumbling remains of a facility known only in whispers and unofficial reports as the Vantua site. There are no government records of its construction. No maps label its location. Yet satellite imagery confirms its existence, a rectangular concrete structure with rusted doors and what appear to be ventilation shafts leading into the earth. It wasn't discovered until 2011, when a group of spelunkers chasing a network of natural caves stumbled across a sealed steel hatch. Spray-painted in faded red were the words, "Soggi orno terminato, non prior, stay terminated, do not open." They opened it anyway. What they found inside was not a military bunker, nor a mining station. It was a laboratory. A makeshift team of investigators, led by local historian Matteo Rinaldi, returned weeks later with proper equipment. The descent into the underground compound took nearly an hour. Narrow stairwells, rusted ladders, and pitch-black corridors littered with rotting paper and broken instruments. There were 8 rooms in total, all of them partially destroyed or looted. However, the central chamber was intact. This room contained 6 glass pods, similar to sensory deprivation tanks, with restraints attached both inside and out. Dried blood was smeared on the walls. Electrodes hung from the ceiling like forgotten puppeteer strings. On a nearby desk was a series of journals, wrapped in plastic and tied with cord. The documents were written in a mix of Italian and German and dated between 1972 and 1976. The notes referenced something called Progetto Vantua, an unauthorized psychological experiment. Its goal was simple, yet horrifying, to reverse the direction of consciousness. The theory was built on fringe research in neurotemporal synchronization. Essentially, the scientists believed that with precise stimulation of the brain's hippocampus and pineal gland, a subject could be flipped, made to experience time backward, or see life from the perspective of their unconscious mind. The notes became increasingly disjointed. Early pages were filled with technical details, but by the fourth journal, the handwriting had changed. It slanted erratically. Words were repeated, crossed out, rewritten upside down. The last full entry read, "Subject 4 opened his eyes during stasis. He screamed for 17 hours without stopping. His vocal cords tore and he kept screaming, but not from his mouth. The sound came from inside the walls." Subject logs detailed escalating madness. Subjects 2 and 3 reportedly clawed at their own faces while blindfolded. One drew perfect maps of the facility's interior despite never leaving his pod. Another wrote in reverse Latin, a language he had never studied. But the most unsettling part came in a sealed manila folder labeled simply, "Non-recuperable, unrecoverable." Inside were photos, grainy black and white stills of what appeared to be a human figure, naked and crouched in the corner of one of the lab rooms. In each photo, the figure's face was obscured, by motion, by shadow, or by static. In one image, the figure seemed to be looking directly at the camera, though its eyes were black voids. On the back of the final photo, in smeared pen, "They aren't gone. They're inside now." The local team left the facility and sent their findings to authorities. When Italian military intelligence arrived 2 days later, the entire site had collapsed. The entrance tunnel caved in, sealing the underground lab forever. No seismic activity had been recorded. Later that year, Matteo Rinaldi, the historian who led the investigation, began experiencing violent nightmares. He claimed he could see the Vantua lab as if he were still inside it. In one dream, he stood before one of the glass pods and saw himself, eyes rolled back, mouth filled with wires, whispering backward, "You woke us." Matteo disappeared in December 2011. His apartment showed no signs of struggle, but his mirrors were all shattered. On the wall, scrawled in ash, was a single sentence, "You cannot invert the mind without leaving the soul behind." No further attempts to explore the Vantua site have succeeded. All entrances are either sealed or flooded. The area is now considered a restricted zone, though there is no official designation. Yet odd things continue to happen nearby. Hikers report hearing voices beneath the ground. Animals refuse to approach the hill. A satellite drone in 2018 picked up faint heat signatures from the ruins, despite the fact that no power has run through the site for over 4 decades. Some believe the experiment succeeded, that at least one subject was truly inverted. But if so, what does that mean? Is their mind trapped in another dimension? Or did something else take its place, something wearing the subject's face? One independent researcher who has studied the surviving journals claims that the project was not designed for military use or psychiatric therapy. He believes it was a failed attempt at interdimensional transference. In his words, they didn't try to see the other side of the mind. They tried to enter it. And whatever they brought back may still be there, waiting for the next curious soul to unlock the hatch. The house that whispers your name. In the heart of Virginia's Blue Ridge Mountains lies a property known only to locals as the Hollow House. It's a decrepit Victorian mansion tucked away beyond the tree line, so hidden that it doesn't appear on Google Maps or any land registry. No official records can be found, no blueprints, no ownership titles, no history of purchase or sale. Yet the house stands, 3 stories high, with boarded windows and ivy curling like veins across its rotted siding. It is a house no one admits to building. The earliest known account comes from 1912, found in a diary belonging to a man named Isaac Thurman. He was a coal surveyor who, during an expedition, wandered off trail and discovered the structure after following what he described as a voice in the wind, calling his name. He entered, thinking perhaps someone needed help. but what he found was far from natural. Isaac's diary describes a home frozen in time. The furniture was arranged neatly. A kettle sat cold on the stove. Dust covered everything, but there were no signs of wildlife or weather damage. No cracks. No mold. Just silence. Then, the whispers started. Isaac claimed the house said his name. Not shouted, not spoke, whispered. Always from a direction just out of sight. He left immediately but returned 3 more times over the next year, each visit more disturbing than the last. By his 3rd entry, he wrote, "It knows things. It whispered my mother's death before the telegram arrived. It whispered my thoughts before I had them. It whispered my sins as if it had been watching since the day I was born." His final note read, "I am not leaving the house. It promised me answers. It promised to show me what I am when no one is looking." Isaac was never seen again. His body was never found. The diary was recovered in 1934 by a local hiker who died weeks later in a freak accident involving a malfunctioning wood chipper, though he had no history of using power tools. Over the decades, the Hollow House gained a sinister reputation. Children dared each other to find it. Some did, and returned rattled, shaking, pale. Others never came back. In 1957, a woman named Dolores Kravitz went missing while out painting in the hills. Her husband, Warren, found her easel leaning against the front gate of the house. He later reported hearing his wife's voice whispering from inside, calling him gently, "Warren, I'm still here. I see you." He refused to go in. She was never found. Then came the Burnett team in 1978, a group of paranormal researchers funded by a fringe university. They brought with them cameras, audio equipment, and sensors. They set up shop near the house and streamed a continuous broadcast to a private feed. The footage started normally, capturing eerie silence and abnormal EMF readings. But 36 hours in, the feed glitched, then resumed, now showing a version of the house that had changed. The porch was freshly painted. The ivy was gone. Lights flickered inside. It looked lived in. And then, the names began. On the audio, you could hear the house whispering. Mary Ann, James, Arthur, Lucy. Each one was a member of the Burnett team. In the footage, one by one, they turned toward the house and walked in, without speaking, without hesitation, like sleepwalkers. The last to enter, Mary Ann, smiled directly at the camera before stepping through the threshold. The door shut behind her. Authorities found the equipment abandoned in the woods. No trace of the researchers was ever recovered. The last recorded signal was an audio clip of heavy breathing and a hoarse voice saying, "We are part of it now." Locals began reporting sightings of people in the windows of the Hollow House, people who resembled those that had gone missing. Sometimes they appeared dressed in clothes from decades past. A boy who vanished in the 1960s, an old woman lost in 1995, all standing still, looking out, watching, whispering. In 2010, a tech vlogger named Mason Leary made the trek after a viewer emailed him GPS coordinates. He live-streamed the journey to his 30,000 followers. The footage went viral, until it abruptly cut off. The stream ended just after Mason said, "It's saying my name." He was never heard from again. Attempts to locate the house have mostly failed. The forest shifts, trails disappear. Phones lose signal near the perimeter. Some say the Hollow House doesn't exist in a fixed point, that it appears to those it wants, when it wants, wherever it pleases. Those who find it are never quite the same afterward. A woman from West Virginia claims she heard the house whisper her unborn child's name during a dream. She miscarried 2 days later. A hunter from Georgia says he stumbled across the house during a snowstorm, and now, years later, still hears it whispering in his attic. It is unclear what the Hollow House truly is. A sentient structure? A portal? A trap designed to mimic shelter, only to devour the minds of the curious? Whatever the truth, one thing is clear. It remembers everyone who enters, and it always says their name. The Man in the Static. In the winter of 1993, a small rural town in Montana named White Elk experienced a series of power outages. Residents chalked it up to heavy snow and frozen lines. But for a handful of families living on the edge of town, something far more disturbing began during those blackouts, something they would later only refer to in hushed voices as the Static Man. It started with the televisions. Even when unplugged, even when the power was out completely, screens would flicker to life, fuzzy, colorless static crawling across the glass. This would happen at exactly 3:33 a.m., always for exactly 60 seconds. Some claimed to hear faint whispers through the static. Others swore the TV wasn't just flickering, it was watching them back. The first confirmed case was the Melbourne family. The mother, Carla, woke one night to the sound of laughter, distorted and low. She went into the living room to find the unplugged television hissing with static. In the center of the screen was a shape. A tall, dark silhouette, motionless. As she approached, the figure's head turned slowly, inside the screen, as if it were reacting to her presence. When she screamed, the screen went black. Her husband didn't believe her. That is, until the following night, when their 7-year-old son, Milo, was found standing in front of the television whispering to it. He said the man in the screen told him to open the door. When asked what door, Milo pointed to the basement, the one they kept locked ever since the strange sounds began echoing from it weeks before. Within days, other families reported similar experiences. One man, Edgar Lewis, set up a camera to record his living room overnight. When he reviewed the footage, he didn't just see the static, he saw himself sitting on the couch. Only, he hadn't been there. In the footage, his doppelganger sat staring at the screen, bleeding from the eyes, whispering the words, "He's almost through." By the end of January, 6 homes had reported sightings of the figure in the static. All described the same thing, a featureless man, tall and lanky, barely visible unless you stared directly into the noise. In each case, the appearances were preceded by strange dreams involving white noise, a feeling of drowning, and the sensation of hands gripping from behind. When paranormal investigators arrived in early February, they discovered an unnerving pattern. Every household that reported seeing the static man had an analog TV made before 1980. Not digital. Not satellite. These were old box units, cracked dials, rabbit ears, heavy wood frames. Devices that, by all accounts, should have been incapable of producing an image while unplugged. The team set up equipment in one of the affected homes, focusing on a particularly active television owned by the Sandoval family. They left the room unoccupied, recording for hours. At exactly 3:33 a.m., the screen ignited. For 60 seconds, the static swirled in strange patterns, not random at all, but almost deliberate. Like shapes were forming in the noise. And then, one frame. A single second of an actual image. It showed a room filled with televisions stacked on top of each other, all showing static, except one in the center, which displayed a mirror. In the mirror was the reflection of the camera. And behind it, a man standing in the corner. There had been no one in the room at the time. The footage was taken to experts who ruled out glitches or hoaxes. No signs of tampering. The image frame did not exist before or after, just that 1 second. It was like the recording itself had been watched from the other side. That same week, 3 people went missing. Milo Melbourne, the 7-year-old boy, disappeared from his locked bedroom. No signs of forced entry, no footprints in the snow. The only clue was the family television, still unplugged, displaying static for several hours after the disappearance. 2 more vanishings occurred days later, Edgar Lewis and Carla Sandoval, both last seen late at night, both homes found with all televisions facing the front doors, screens glowing, whispering. An audio expert analyzed recordings from that night and discovered hidden frequencies embedded in the static. When isolated and slowed, the message became chillingly clear. One more. Just one more. Let me in. After the disappearances, the strange events ceased. The televisions returned to normal. No more static. No more whispers. Until 2005. A man named Julian Marks, a former TV repairman, published a blog claiming he had reverse-engineered a signal based on the old recordings. Curious and obsessed, he rebuilt a 1970s analog unit using salvaged parts and tuned it to dead frequencies late at night. He claimed that at 3:33 a.m., the static returned, and with it, the man. Julian's final blog post included a single frame from his recording. It showed his own living room. Empty. Except for a shape in the reflection of the blank screen. The shape of a man watching him from behind. Julian was found dead days later. No signs of injury. But the television? Still on. Still whispering. Researchers who've studied the case now theorize the static man is not a ghost or hallucination, but a conscious frequency, something that lives inside the electromagnetic spectrum, waiting for the right technology, the right time to make contact. Not to communicate, but to enter. And it can only do so when we see him. It's why he shows up in old TVs, in analog waves. Digital signals scramble him. Flat screens filter him out. But he's still there, watching from beyond the static. So if you ever see your old television glow when it shouldn't, don't stare. Don't listen. Don't follow your name when it's whispered. Because the man in the static only needs one more. Every case adds a new layer of mystery, leaving more questions than answers. Which one lingers in your mind, and what's your take on what really happened?